And so if you go back to, my original studies of economics, economics is about the efficient use of capital. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to use our resources efficiently. From a macro perspective, if you look at the grid right now, everyone's saying we don't have enough capacity, we don't have enough energy, and that's partly true, and it's partly like very, very much not true, because we have latent capability in the system, and we only use the grid about 55% of the time. Something like 60% of the time the transmission grid is used, and something like 40% of the time the distribution network is used. And so it's not about capacity, it's about how to use that capacity.
Welcome back to Renewable Rides. Our guest today co-founded Voltus in 2016 with a simple premise. Commercial and industrial energy users have enormous untapped flexibility, and the grid needs it. Yet someone needs to build the infrastructure to connect the two. A decade later, Voltus manages 8.5 gigawatts of flexible capacity across North America and was dispatched every single day in 2025 to support the grid reliability and delivered over $240 million to customers in a record year. Matt Plante has spent his career at the intersection of energy markets and business operations, from scaling demand response at the original company, EnerNOC, across PJM and Tennessee Valley Authority, from scratch, to running residential demand response programs at EcoFactor, to now building Voltus into the leading virtual power plant operator in North America. Welcome to Renewable Rides, Matt.
Matt, welcome to Renewable Rides. We're very proud to have you on the show.
Well, it's my absolute pleasure. Thanks so much.
Yeah, here we are. World Cup's just kicked off. We're just chatting about your love for soccer. Can you share what are you passionate about? Soccer can be one of them, but we love to get to know our guests, and it'd be great for you to share what gets you fired up beyond demand response and energy.
So I grew up as a goalie, Gareth. Goalies
nice.
are always a little different, right?
Yeah.
And so it was my pleasure to be the last line of defense. And I actually hadn't thought about that prior to 5 seconds ago, but in some ways, Voltus had started its life as like a last line of defense against bad things happening on the electric grid. And so maybe that's where that all came from, is my love of a goaltender. But now I'm just a coach. And so I coach. I've got 3 daughters. My family's my passion. And I coach 2 of my daughters this fall, and this spring, and my 9-year-old team went unbeaten.
Wow.
And so, that's kind of fun. We had a good time with it.
That's great. I didn't know we were going to be psychiatrists for the day and figuring out where your deep-seated passions came from and what drove demand response. I love it.
I feel like I've just had a major breakthrough in understanding myself. So
it's so good. Like, how did you get into goalkeeping? Was it something you loved doing, or was it a default open position? Like, how did you play that one out?
I maybe they just put the slowest kid there. I'm not really sure. But I loved it, and I absolutely loved it. I think there was always something about being relied on, and if you do your job well, no one cares. And if you do your job poorly, there was a lot of pressure, and I sort of liked that part of it.
Yeah, the exposure is intense, isn't it? One mistake and all eyes are on you, and I think it definitely, there's so many ties, isn't there, when you actually start thinking about the parallels between energy and goalkeeping. I love it.
I love it.
So you've had quite a career arc and journey from goalkeeping growing up to your professional endeavors. Maybe get us up to speed on kind of your personal and professional journey to where you are today.
The connection that I actually have made in the past very clearly is a fun one now in particular, because in school my focus was on international economic development. And it was this combination of economics and government and economic development. And I had an amazing opportunity when I was 23 years old. I moved to Hong Kong. I had never been outside the country. And I moved to Hong Kong in order to help build power plants. And for the next 5 years, I helped to build and worked on a project that was the largest private infrastructure project ever done in Asia. And the independent power producer that I worked for built a 450 megawatt hydro plant in Luzon in the Philippines. And it was an amazing project. It created a ton of jobs. We built a dam. And the problem in the Philippines was that when the rains came, they would wipe out the crops. And so what we said was, okay, we've got a couple of problems here. We have no access to affordable electricity. And then we have these monsoon rains come that hurt the yield for farmers. And so I think we can solve two problems. Let's collect the water and let's create electricity out of it. And so crop yields went up, affordable electricity happened, job creation happened. And so it was this like unbelievable connection. And I've been, thinking about and studying and focusing my studies on international economic development, and I lived it for like 5 years, and it formed in my mind this connection between energy and economic development. And then I went back to the U.S. I joined a startup that turned into EnerNOC, which became a public company and was one of the demand response 1.0 companies. And from then on, the sort of economic development aspect for a long time went away, and it was about the grid and grid reliability and electricity and clean energy. And so that was the focus for the next 15 years. And over the last two, I feel like it's come full circle, because right now, lack of energy is what is holding us back from the AI economy. And so it's been sort of a fun arc back to where I originally began, perhaps.
And one of the things that I heard in that is especially in Luzon there, the systems thinking of how do we solve multiple problems with one solution. I think a lot of that can hold true in your work today, and the interconnectedness of everything. Maybe you can talk a little bit about Voltus and kind of some of the big challenges that you're working to solve, and how they're connected in so many ways to the businesses, to the grid, to society in general.
Yeah. To be clear, Dan, like I do what I do because of climate change, but I do it through helping businesses gain a competitive advantage on their energy management. And it's a wonderful thing because I've got my goals and my customers have their goals. And when I help my customers solve their goals, I solve my goals. And so it works. And it really works at scale. And so the only thing we're focused on now is how do we get to scale? How do we bring as large a resource as is possible to all these electric grids so that we can actually run the grid on renewables? And in doing that, in creating the largest resource possible, that means I'm helping more and more commercial and industrial businesses with their energy costs. And so that's a huge plus. And I think one of the most satisfying parts of my job is that I get to see how America works. And when you go into a cold storage company or a wastewater treatment plant or a big box retailer or a supermarket or a cold storage facility or injection molding facility, it's fun. And you get to understand how all things are made. And then my customers' customers are my customers, and my customers' suppliers are my customers.
Yeah.
And they talk to me about the load flexibility that they have and their ability to participate in these programs. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I know exactly where your product is going when it leaves this thing, and I know exactly where it's sold. And those folks are also participating in the programs. And so this flywheel starts to happen. And then you do end up being able to bring a pretty considerable resource to these grids.
Mm. And the impact you can have is massive, isn't it? I love you describing the complexity of the supply chain. Can I just ask, Matt, at what point did you feel comfortable saying, I am doing this for climate change? Because I don't think many people really back themselves to come out and overtly say that. When did you kind of become comfortable with that? When did you start socializing that?
I'm a goaltender, Gareth. So I say
Yeah.
what I say what I want to say, and I act the way that I want to act. And
Yeah.
look, how deep do you want to go? But you got to be true to yourself. And I feel extraordinarily comfortable. I have voted for Republicans. I have voted for Democrats. I tend to vote for people.
Yeah.
And I have the things that I believe in, very significantly. I kind of learned some hard lessons early on. I lost a couple people close to me as a child. That's where some of my fundamental things that I believe in were formed. And so one of those fundamental things I believe in that has always driven me is that I want to reach my potential.
Yeah.
And I think that that is what drives me. Like, what is my potential and how do I reach it? Because I don't want to leave anything on the table. And so that's part of it. And then the second part of it is like, look, you've got one life to live, and it's awfully difficult to live a life if you're not true to yourself. And so how can I be true to myself? So it doesn't matter to me who's in office or what the fad is. I believe what I believe, and I'm going to try to do the right thing.
Yeah, I love it. And massive shout out to you and kudos, because I think it's very impressive, and I really respect it a lot. In terms of, just before we move into the crux of talking about what you guys are up to, that international experience, for many people, they're always exploring, how do I navigate my career? Where do I start? How do I get into it? How critical was that to your success? And what experiences did you take away from that have kind of shaped everything else that you've done today?
Not everyone wanted that opportunity, right? But I jumped at it, and it served as certainly a force multiplier.
Yeah.
It essentially allowed me to leapfrog other people who were doing similar things to me back home, because I went and I got experience that was probably over my head at the time, right? I was a little bit over my skis when I went over there, and it made me uncomfortable, and I had to learn really fast, and I had to catch up to feel like I was adding value and worthy of the opportunity that was given to me. And so I worked incredibly hard to get good at what I was doing. And in so doing, I probably leapfrogged people who I had started with back in the US. But the other thing is, and like the most important takeaway to me, and this is something that I'll never forget and I try to pay back, is I had a fantastic mentor, a guy by the name of Jack Gerardo, and he was one of the most important people in my professional life. And Jack challenged me, empowered me, gave me the freedom to make some mistakes, and really pushed me. And I wouldn't be who I am without Jack. And so we've tried ever since to kind of give people the same opportunities, right? And to be the mentor to folks on our team that Jack was to me.
Hey man, I've had some amazing mentors and continue to learn from them to this day, and look to do the same for other younger folks that are coming in. Let's shift into demand response and load flexibility, and maybe start a bit with just, I mean, you've been at this for 20 years. Help our listeners understand, like, at the core, outside of specifics of what you guys do, like, what is this notion of load flexibility, demand response, and why is it important?
I absolutely love it. And the reason I love it from a macro sense is it's a more efficient use of resources. And so if you go back to, my original studies of economics is about the efficient use of capital. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to use our resources efficiently. From a macro perspective, if you look at the grid right now, everyone's saying we don't have enough capacity, we don't have enough energy, and that's partly true. And it's partly very, very much not true, because we have latent capability in the system, and we only use the grid about 55% of the time. Something like 60% of the time the transmission grid is used, and something like 40% of the time the distribution network is used. Crazy. And so it's not about capacity, it's about how to use that capacity. And so from a macro perspective, I absolutely love it. And then a customer perspective, it's like, here's the question that I want to ask a customer, Dan. I want the question to the customer be, I'm not asking you to make less product. That doesn't work for you. I'm asking you to make the same amount of product that you would make, but to do it more profitably.
Yeah.
And that should, not only should that work for you, but that has to work for you. And so my job then is to take, whether it's any of these businesses that we work in, the 78 commercial types of commercial industrial businesses is how we code them based upon what you do. And that helps me figure out how to help you. And we take these businesses and we say, okay, great. Here are your constraints. Here are your capabilities. Here's how you use energy. How can I help you make just as much product as you've always been doing and need to do, but to do it more profitably?
And so, Matt, you obviously did this through your initial stage of your career, and you had a lot of success with EnerNOC across PJM, TVA. What was the gap that you saw and the opportunity for you to sort of accelerate that, deliver the value at scale? Where does Voltus fit into that picture?
Without going down a rabbit hole of what success means, Gareth, I'd argue that we didn't have success at EnerNOC.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that EnerNOC deserves credit for starting an industry. They did. They started the industry, and we've continued where they left off. But they didn't get to the point where they truly made a difference in terms of how the grid is run. And I think now, given the macro conditions, I think we now have the chance to remake the grid and make it work the way we want to. And that is ultimately, I will consider this whole endeavor worth it if the grid ends up being run on nothing but renewables and batteries and load flexibility. I think actually we're going to get there. And it's going to take the next 40 years, it's going to take the next 50 years to get there. But I think that's actually where we're going to end up. And then I will say, okay, great. This whole thing was worth it. That's how I think about it.
So let's spend a moment there. Where did you feel like you didn't reach the full potential at EnerNOC? Like, what was the missing piece there that, or maybe that was the impetus for creating Voltus?
It certainly was. The grid, we didn't meaningfully change the percentage of the grid that could be run on renewables. So but it goes back, Dan, to why was the company started? And it was started as the last line of defense. It was started as a direct result of the blackouts of New York City in 2003. EnerNOC was started on the heels of that event. And that's when the whole smart grid, right, came into being. And it was customers in Ohio. The utilities in Ohio didn't know that there was a blackout until their customers called them and said, we have no power. And we were like, perhaps we can use information technology to improve this electric grid that is, the largest single piece of machinery we've ever built. Maybe it needs a little bit of an upgrade, right? And so I think since then we've sort of been slowly upgrading the grid through all sorts of different technologies to modernize the grid. But that business was meant to deliver load relief to a grid a couple of times a year. So that's what they did for 10 years. But you don't meaningfully change the grid or the climate or the percentage of renewables that can come on. We started Voltus in order to focus on those things. And so although the concept is similar or the same, we are going to pay a commercial industrial customer to use energy slightly differently in order to help the grid. The reason for it was different. So it's not last line of defense. It is to incorporate renewables onto the grid. And so at Voltus, one of the things that we talk about is that we have been dispatched and we have provided relief to the grid, meaning we have reduced load on the grid every single day for more than 2 years. And that's because in Oklahoma, which is part of the Southwest Power Pool, which is an electric grid the size of California, so it's a 50 gigawatt grid. That grid sometimes runs on 92% wind.
Yeah, wow.
But the wind, as we know, is a little bit fickle, right? And is intermittent. And that's actually okay if you have batteries and load flexibility to back it up. So SPP dispatches us sometimes twice a day for 15 minutes at a time, and we take load off until the wind is back to what they thought it was going to be, and then conditions go back to normal. And so that's the kind of impact that we want to have. We want everybody to be able to run their grid on 92% wind, and we can do that with a lot of load flexibility.
And what do you think, Matt, the turn? Because it feels like this has really caught a lot of momentum, a lot of attention. You've been working on it for a long time. What has been the turning point? And what do you still see as being like the biggest misconceptions or barriers to this continuing to accelerate at the rate that you want to see it occur at?
Yeah, so certainly affordability, Gareth,
Yeah.
is on everybody's mind, and it's on the homeowner's mind, in the renter's mind, the individual's mind, as much as it is on the commercial industrial business mind.
Yeah.
But I think C&I customers care about affordability and they care about resiliency.
Yep.
And the reliability of the grid has been in question. Their resiliency has gone down, and affordability is now something they think more and more about. So we help solve the affordability problem for our customers. And so that's a tipping point, certainly. And then from a policy perspective, you know, when this industry was started back in 2003, you had to change every rule to allow for demand response because the grid was in fact built for independent power producers, which makes sense. And I'll tell a couple funny stories. So back in 2007, PJM allowed customers, commercial and industrial businesses, to provide ancillary services. Now that's what PJM calls it. Yep. To a commercial industrial customer, it meant that a commercial industrial customer was asked to reduce its electricity consumption on 10 minutes notice. So we signed up a bunch of customers who were able to provide this sort of load flexibility to the grid on 10 minutes notice. We automated the process for them, and they delivered it. And what PJM said was, well, we're not really sure whether it's going to work. So we procure 1,000 megawatts of this service every hour. We'll let you provide us with 100 megawatts, so 10%.
Okay.
And then we did it. We gave them 100 megawatts. And after a year, they went and they looked at our performance versus generators' performance. And they scratch their heads and they're like, holy cow, never would we have expected this. But actually, demand response performs better than generators on 10 minutes notice. And so at that point, do you think they lifted the cap and said, provide as much as you want, you're a better resource? Of course not. They said, oh, nice job, guys. We're going to increase the cap to 20%, right?
Yeah, right.
So the 20 years that we've been in the industry has been this journey of proving over and over and over again that you can deliver what the grid is asking of you. And at first, this was really frustrating to me because I said, why in the world haven't you lifted this cap? And then I don't want to say that I've accepted it, but I understand that their job is to maintain reliability. And so that is first and foremost. And so it's just, look, we try to push them as much as possible while realizing the sort of rules that they live by, right? And so we've had to incrementally, over the last 20 years, create this structure that allows for customers to do all these things that they're capable of doing. And the awesome news is if we started at, you know, if we start to continue the soccer analogy, right? If we started somewhere in my own penalty box,
yeah,
I'm now like at the 18-yard line of the opponent, right? So we've gone 80% of the way toward creating the world that we want to live in. We still have work to do, but we are an accepted part of how grid operators run their grid. And, you know, that's a win.
Yeah. It's so counterintuitive, isn't it? We're responsible for reliability and resilience, and yet we're not going to support the asset that is providing the most robust resilience and support. So I'm glad that you're seeing the perception change and shift from a like a mechanics perspective. As a CNI business leader, how do I think about this? Like, what is happening? I'm running my facility. You're telling me that I can continue to run my facility and I can save some money. In the simplest terms, how does that work?
So I make a commitment to you, and you make a commitment to me. And my commitment to you is that we are going to provide you with $100,000 a year, and your commitment to me is that you are going to reduce your electricity consumption or use your own electricity consumption, i.e. distributed generation or a battery, when asked to do so. And so my job is to make that process as easy as possible on you so that you can focus on your core business and I can worry about your energy costs such that you make just as much product as you want to, but you do it more profitably. And so one of the things that is positive for commercial and industrial energy leaders is that their load flexibility is now worth more than it's ever been worth.
Yep.
And what we want to do is we want to fix it so that you can actually budget for it. And that's been something that's been hard to do historically because you have these fluctuations in price year over year. So I'll give you an example. In MISO, MISO is the second largest electric grid in the world, spanning 12 states in the middle of the country. And they have what's called a prompt auction. So about 20% of a commercial and industrial customer's utility bill is made up of capacity costs. Those demand side capacity costs are governed by an auction that MISO runs once a year. They hold that auction in April every year, and then the auction clears at a given price, and the customer pays that price as of June, 2 months later. Not a lot of time for a customer to budget. Way too late, in fact, for a customer to budget. And those prices have massive swings. And so when we entered the MISO market, when we first started paying attention to the MISO market, capacity was extraordinarily cheap. It was $500 per megawatt per year.
Oh, wow.
But through load growth, capacity in MISO has reached up to $90,000 per megawatt per year. Wow. Right? That's a 180 increase from where it started. And so if you're a CNI energy manager, how do you deal with the fact that 20% of your bill can change 180x from year one to year two? Let me put this in context of a cold storage customer. So a cold storage business probably has a peak demand of about 1,000 kilowatts. That cold storage business was paying $500 per year for its demand charges, and now it's paying $90,000 a year for its one component of its demand charges. So that's obviously a massive, massive change, right? And so what we want to do, and what we've been able to do, is say, guys, that's no way to run a business. How can you run a business with these changes? I want to guarantee you what you're going to pay, and I want to guarantee you what I'm going to pay you so that you can budget it and fix it. And now we're able to do that. And so through all the increase in electricity prices that customers are dealing with, there are some positives, and the fact that your load flexibility is worth a lot more is one of those positives.
Yeah. And can I just ask, are you doing that through hardware, software, and then when you get the question, I don't want you controlling my energy and my operations, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, so we do it through whatever kind of wear the customer wants. Sometimes it's hardware, sometimes it's software. My obligation, right? I have an obligation to you as a customer. My obligation to the grid is to prove to the electric grid that we actually reduce load. And so I have to either give them utility data or What we like to do is give you the ability to see your electricity consumption in real time through a piece of equipment that I put and attached to your utility meter on my network. And then I make my data your data available to you through my platform. So you can see your electricity consumption in real time every 30 seconds. So separate and apart from me paying you for your load flexibility, you now have the ability to see and manage your electricity consumption, in real time. So that's a positive. The actual curtailment of your load is a conversation. I want to automate as much of it as possible so that, again, you can focus on your job and I can focus on my thing. But yes, there are many times when a customer says, like, over my dead body, and that's actually sometimes fine. And so a lot of customers have control rooms that are operated and manned 24/7. We send a signal to that control room, and instead of controlling the piece of equipment directly, it's like there's a tiny bit of manual step in the process where I'll send a signal to the control room. You're in the control room, you get the signal, and then you hit the switch, and that's perfectly okay.
So historically, you mentioned in the early days, demand response was 5, maybe 10 times a year. There's these events that were like the critical peak demand events where this all came about. And now you're dispatching daily, if not multiple times a day. How, again, going back to the business leader that says, no way you're going to control my operation. If you're asking for there's events or signals that are going to be coming through multiple times a day, how should I be planning for that and thinking about that? And do they happen at consistent times? Do they happen irregularly? What does that look like?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because that's the exact question, Dan, that my customers ask of us, right? The answer is I provide relief to the grid every single day. That doesn't mean that you as a customer provide relief every day to the grid. The good news is you have a capability, and that's different than Gareth's capability. And so the old way would be that I would walk into your shop and I would walk into Gareth's site and I would say, guys, I need you to do this. And Dan, you might have been Pepsi, and Gareth, you might have been Coca-Cola.
Yep.
And I would say, guys, I need you to reduce your load on 10 minutes time, and I need you to do it for 2 hours at a time. And Gareth would say, ooh, I can't do 10 minutes at a time. It takes me 30 minutes to get the process out of my injection molders, or it all gums up and bad things happen. So I need 30 minutes. But once I'm offline, I can actually go for 4 hours. And I'm like, you're no good. I need 10 minutes. And then I'd go across the street to Coca-Cola and I'd say, Dan, here's the deal. I need you to do this. And you'd say, 10 minutes is no problem. I can do 4 minutes. But I actually can't do 4 hours. I can only do 3 hours, 59 minutes and 59 seconds. And I'd be like, Dan, you are no good to me, right? And now what we do is we walk in, we say, what are your capabilities, Dan? And Gareth, what are your capabilities? Okay, these are your capabilities, and this is what you allow us to do, and these are your constraints. Great. I can pay you $75,000. Gareth, these are your constraints. These are your capabilities. Great. I can pay you $121,000. And so the grid and we and the industry have created all sorts of ways for a customer to add value. And it's no longer like a program that we fit you into. It's like, we're going to find a way to monetize your capabilities.
Love that. And good to know that I kind of participate as I wish, or as I can. You mentioned before leveraging distributed generation and or storage. Do I need to have any impacts to my operation to participate in these programs? Could I continue with business as usual, but discharge a battery into the grid in place of reducing my load and still have some sort of benefit to it?
Yes, please.
and maybe this is certainly something that's evolved certainly in the last couple years with battery prices dropping as much as they have. But talk us through what that looks like, and maybe both can happen at the same time. I can reduce my load and discharge my battery.
It's such a fun time to be doing what we're doing because things are all changing at the same time. So in other words, if only prices were increasing and customers were getting kind of hurt more than usual and nothing else was happening, like that's bad, obviously. And if only, battery prices were coming down to make batteries affordable, that's good, obviously. And if only there was a lot of load growth on the grid from AI, that's different, obviously. All of these things are happening simultaneously. And so it's making our job, as you guys know, so much fun to be able to deliver solutions to a customer that you couldn't deliver before. We made an acquisition a couple of weeks ago. We acquired a company called Brightfield. And Brightfield was started by a guy named Tim Haid. And Tim was one of the co-founders of Scale Microgrids. And Brightfield's CTO is a guy named Lars Johnson. And Lars was the CTO of STEM. And so between STEM and Scale Microgrids, you're talking about people who have installed a lot of behind-the-meter commercial industrial batteries. And that number is not that big because the math used to not math, right?
Exactly.
And so you had high battery prices without a financeable revenue stream to actually put the battery in place. And those problems are solved. So as you said, the cost of a battery is coming down and is going to continue to come down. But we now have these long-term fixed contracts that pay us a certain amount in which we can use batteries and want to use batteries for these contracts. And so we've solved both problems at the same time. And so now we're going to a customer and we're saying, hey, you really should consider a battery because the payback used to be 8 years and now it's 3.5 years, right? And that's a totally different conversation. So we don't install these batteries ourselves. We work with partners who deploy C&I batteries, but we make our partners' value proposition even better.
Yeah. And we love this moment in time as well for that reason, Matt. Helping our customers design and then buy these on-site systems. It was all about cost reduction, now being able to layer in different revenue stacks, different ways to pay off the asset. It's so powerful, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And so all of this culminates in what's referred to as a VPP. Can you tell our audience what a VPP is, what that stands for, and ultimately, as this plays out, how do you see VPPs being such a key part of the market?
Do I have to? I don't love the term, but the term is the term. And
Yep.
So we're going to go with the term. So a VPP stands for a virtual power plant, which essentially goes back to this efficiency thing. It's instead of producing power, you're actually conserving power. And so we used to say that we've built churches for Christmas and Easter, meaning if the peak demand in an area is 1,000 units, we have 1,100 units of power, but normally the demand in an area is 600 units. And so we have 1,100 units for 600 units. And so what we're saying now is there's kind of a better way to do it, and we can reduce everyone's rates if we just use it slightly differently. And so a battery is just a phenomenal way to make this happen so that we're making more efficient use of the hard infrastructure. And a virtual power plant is nothing other than an aggregation of distributed energy resources, which is to say, my job is to go talk to commercial and industrial customers, understand what they're capable of doing in terms of reducing electricity on the grid for certain periods of time at certain durations with certain advance notices in order to get paid a certain amount of money, and then pooling all of those customers together to create a resource for a grid. That's a virtual power plant.
If we could reframe that and rename it, what would it be? What would you prefer?
This is a good brainstorming exercise. So I like distributed capacity. So it is distributed, and the reason I like distributed is there's not one point of failure. And so power plants sometimes fail. Famously, the natural gas plants in Texas didn't operate under cold weather, right? Sometimes you have a flock of birds fly into a turbine and a generating plant goes offline. And so a lot of the times when we are called upon to do our thing, it's because a power plant has unexpectedly gone offline.
Mm.
So the one of the benefits of Voltus is that we have no single point of failure. Our 500 megawatts that we're bringing the grid is not a single asset. It's 500 distributed assets, right?
Yeah.
So you just reduce risk to the grid that way. So I would go with distributed capacity, but I don't make all the rules.
I like it. Well, building on that distributed theme, Matt, obviously AI is getting all the hype right now. Data centers struggling to find access to power. There's the concept of bring your own power or bring your own capacity. Do you want to share what that means, what you're seeing in the market, how crazy it is, and how you're thinking about it?
Yeah, I'll give you a real life example. A data center customer of ours is building a data center in Missouri. And they came to us and said, can you provide us with a VPP in Missouri? And 4 months later, we went to all of our commercial industrial customers in Missouri and said, hey, you know that thing we do for you in Illinois where we pay you $60,000 a year for you to do this? Do you want to do that in Missouri too? And they said yes. And so we aggregated in a 4-month period of time of 100 megawatts so that this data center can connect to the grid sooner than they otherwise would have. And they said to us, you're the only place where we could have gone and got 100 megawatts in 4 months, because otherwise they're dealing with interconnection queues and they're dealing with supply chain constraints because GE Vernova is sold out of turbines for the next 4 years. But they come to us and we use existing resources in order to give them this thing that already exists and put money back into commercial industrial businesses by doing it. So I think everybody wins.
And is the data center developer the one that's making those payments to the C&I businesses, or is that the utility?
The data center developer is funding the payments to the commercial industrial customers, yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm thinking back, the economist in you has to love this. And where I'm going with this is most C&I businesses, when we look at the utility tariffs that businesses are on, many are on flat rates. Some are on time of use rates, but even the time of use rates are pretty crude, large chunks of time. And it's always been to me, like, the more we can expose people to the actual price signals, the more we can change behavior. What you're doing is allowing them to respond to real-time price signals and capitalize on them. Like, does the economist in you just get super excited every day at the ability to allow people to participate in these real-time signals?
Absolutely. It's a better way. It's a better way to do it. And Dan, I try to keep things simple and remember, North Star principles and first fundamentals, right? And so again, to me, it comes down to this question. Don't work with me if I can't help you make as much product as you want to and just do it more profitably. But I'm pretty sure that I can actually create that for you. And so it's this awesome thing where you're going to act in your financial interest. And by acting in your financial interest, I'm able to move pretty quickly to go help create the grid that I want to create.
And everyone's then a downstream beneficiary of that, aren't they? I think that's the key to all of this, is the grid actually wins in this scenario.
Correct.
Why isn't this everywhere, and why isn't every business enrolled in it? What's the constraint?
We have 8.5 gigawatts under management. And so, that's about a third of the size of New England. And so I would say we're getting there. And like I said, we've gone 80 yards down the field toward creating the regulatory conditions. Virtual power plants, generally speaking, have bipartisan support. They have support from PJ. We talked to the SVP of operations at PJM yesterday. We talk to senior leaders at ISOs all the time, and they say, yes, more. Like, we appreciate so much the benefits that demand response have on our system. It's got to be reliable, but as long as it's reliable, we're going to continue to pay for it, and we love using it as a resource on our grid. So I do think that, like, everything is happening, Dan, so that now we can go from 8.5 gigawatts to 30 gigawatts over the next 4 years. And this is becoming standard operating procedure, both for the grids and for commercial industrial customers. Because if I am Coca-Cola and I do compete against Pepsi, and I have helped Coca-Cola make just as much product and do it more profitably, guess who else needs to do it to keep up?
And so if we kind of run with that a little bit and look into your crystal ball over the next 5 years, am I, as a large scale C&I business with operations, very geographically diverse across the country, am I going to be able to enroll in these programs in more places? Am I going to get paid more in the places that I'm already operating in? Like, what do the next 5 years look like?
The answer succinctly to both of those questions is yes. And so the data-based answer to this question is, we track very closely the dollar per megawatt that we have been able to pay our customers since we were founded in 2016. And in 2027, that will be 3 times what it was 3 years ago. And so the payments that you're getting are significantly more. So your load flexibility is worth more than it's ever been worth. And everyone is under this crunch of wanting to continue economic development and deal with affordability. And so this is a solution to those problems as well. And so more states are saying, please come in. And there have been some really positive movements in just the last 6 months alone. I think Governor Shapiro kind of started, in some ways, having states think about energy affordability. Most recently, the state of Virginia passed a new law, which is the first of its kind, in that it incents utilization of the grid. So we talked about the fact that the transmission grid is only used 60% of the time and the distribution grid is used 40%. They are now measuring those numbers, and you really can have an effect on affordability when you make those numbers go up. So you have a fixed asset, the asset has its cost, and when you use that asset more, it distributes that cost. And so that's exactly what we want. And so they have now created a law to incent for better and more efficient use of that transmission and distribution grid. And so that's a really positive thing. And so, yeah, more states are encouraging these sorts of things. And generally speaking, to bring it back to batteries for just a second, a lot of states put in place incentives to install solar. And I think we're going to see the same thing for batteries that we saw for solar.
Yeah.
We're seeing it in Illinois and seeing it in Jersey and more places popping up. Right? I completely agree with you.
Do you see any end in sight, Matt, or do you think the value of this capacity is just going to keep being compensated in ever increasing ways? What becomes the constraint there, or where does it tap out?
I don't know. And like, one of the things I've tried to avoid is predicting the future prices, because I'm not better than anyone else at predicting future prices, which is one of the reasons that we're so happy that we've been able to sign long-term fixed price contracts so that I can tell a commercial and industrial customer exactly what I can pay them for the next 10 years. That's a pretty powerful thing. I don't know. Is long-form energy storage going to solve all our problems? Are we going to build so much nuclear? Is Elon going to beam down energy from space, right, as the world's first trillionaire as of today? I don't know, but I do think that customers have a problem in terms of affordability and their bills, and what we're trying to do is create more and more solutions for them to help them manage those costs.
So good. This has been great, Matt. I think we could go on for hours, but I think respecting your time, let's close out with the power surge round. So this has been a fascinating discussion. I'm actually quite excited to hear how you respond to this one. If you could be any one energy technology, what would it be and why?
I would be a battery. I would be a battery because I have more control over my own costs. If I have a battery, the cost of installing me is going down and the value of me is going up.
So good. You're extremely well informed. Where do you get your information? Newsletters, podcasts, publications. Where do you go for your information?
My teammates, number one. And so, I travel a lot, and so I'm constantly listening to podcasts as I travel. But I get the most amount of information from my own team. And a couple of things that we really value at Voltus, we really value functional expertise. So I am really good at accounting. I am really good at sales. I am a really good software engineer. And the other thing that we really value is subject matter expertise. So I know everything there is to know about ELCC and PJM, or I know everything there is to know about the new California rate structure that's going to change how commercial and industrial customers pay for their electricity. And so I get most of my information from my teammates.
Matt, in your life, you will have been successful when?
I don't like that word, but I think like the word that I like is like what brings me joy and what brings me fulfillment. And to me, that is about meeting my potential as
nice.
As a human, as a friend, as a father and a husband, as a leader of a business, as a retired athlete. I want to hit my potential.
So good. And we're recording here on Friday, June 12th. Go USA tonight.
Go USA.
Yeah.
There we go.
And if you could ask of our customers, the C&I business leaders, to do something next week, what would it be? What would be your call to action?
Our best relationships with our customers happen when they share with us their goals and the things that have been hard for them to tackle. And that allows me to quickly say, like, ooh, I can't help you, but I might know somebody who can. Or, ooh, I can help you, and I'm super excited. Let's talk about that. And so it's that sort of partnership that we have with our customers is when things really work.
That's awesome. Matt, really appreciate your time. Appreciate your insights. Thank you for your leadership in this space. So much opportunity ahead, and excited for the beginnings of the work that we're doing together as well. Thank you guys for continuing to spread the word. We really appreciate your podcast and your company as well. And so let's keep going. Let's all keep going, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Cheers, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
See ya. Whoa, Gareth, what a force Matt is.
Yeah, I loved it. I really enjoy Matt, and we're now living in the same town up in Bend, and I'm looking forward to spending more time with him because super well considered, obviously very smart. I like that he's willing to back his beliefs and speak them out loud, and constantly improve and challenge himself and deliver on what his potential is. I think all fantastic qualities. And what did you take away from it? Yeah, a couple things. I think it really had me hearkening back to not just the conversation that we had with Amory Lovins, but just his one of his kind of insights or principles over the past many decades, which is this notion of the negawatt, and it's the amount of electricity that was never used. And I think that while that was primarily around energy efficiency and using more efficient equipment and using less energy, in this case, it's about when you're consuming the electricity. And at times when the grid is strained, or if I think about Matt's vision for the future, when the renewables on the grid maybe come down because the wind isn't blowing as hard, or the clouds blow over and the sun isn't shining as hard, that you decrease your consumption during those times. And those are some of the negawatts in that. And I think
greater utilization of the grid and utilizing it when it's either not as constrained or when there are more renewables pumping through the grid is going to be a better thing in the long run. And I love that the way that they're approaching solving this challenge.
Yeah, it's that first step, isn't it, Dan? Of like we've talked about this lots of today. We're all passive consumers. We have no control. Power shows up if and when available. We have no control over the price. We don't know how clean it is. And this is kind of the first step in being that active participant, isn't it? Where you can actually benefit your business. You can support the grid. You can support the overall welfare of our communities and economies. And then by generating and storing your own energy at your facility, then that turbocharges that and shifts you from being that active participant to then being able to control your own destiny and being able to monetize the market as you see fit, when you see fit. And I think this is the exciting time that we're in, isn't it? Is like, I think some people are just starting that transition from passive to active, and others have already done that, and now they're thinking about how do they really double down on that and be true leaders in this energy space.
Absolutely. And when we actually finished the recording, we had a quick debrief with Matt, and one of the things that he wanted to share with listeners was kind of as a first step is gathering your baseline information. What are you actually consuming? And it continues to be a shock to us how many people don't have access to that information. And how can you shift your operations or your consumption if you don't actually know when you're consuming or how much you're consuming? And so as a first step, it's just get the necessary data loggers. If your utility is not able to provide you this information, it's relatively inexpensive to deploy some bits of equipment at your meter. And in some cases, you might not actually have to pay for it. You can get others like a Voltus pay for it to start to gather that information and then open up the opportunity to make strategic decisions.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's key, isn't it? And especially for our customers, reach out. If you don't have that visibility, if you want more visibility, we can help advise you on that and show you how to get access to that. Because without that data, you're just flying blind, and it's critical to make those strategic decisions based on data and intelligence. Otherwise, you're underrepresenting the opportunity for sure.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a dynamic space, and really excited for all the things we have ahead. So appreciate Matt for his time and insights and all the leadership that he and his team are taking in this market.
Great seeing you, and enjoy the World Cup.
Yeah, you too. Enjoy the game tomorrow night.
Nice.
See you guys.
See ya.
We receive a lot of questions from business leaders around the world wanting to learn more about the energy transition, what is possible, and where to start. So to help you stay informed and up to date on best practices, opportunities, risks, and success stories, we created an industry newsfeed at VECKTA.com/news with all our podcasts, blogs, and newsletter. Check it out and connect with Dan, myself, and the VECKTA team to learn more. Cheers and have a good one.